mistakenly left behind 6 teeth that had been beaten out of her skull. They also found a toenail painted chocolate brown. That's like horrific. Everything about it. The police go to a crime scene. They don't pick up all the teeth.
Right. They already know that there are victims that are like this crime, but haven't done anything about it yet.
Mm-hmm.
What's to note about Hargrove is that she was found just up the road from Tara Nicholson, which is the victim that Antoine was charged with murder for.
The next victim was Christine Boone. Christine Boone was found March 5th, 2010. She was 43 years old. She was reported missing January 16, 2007 by her daughter-in-law, but she was actually last seen August 25th, 2006. So it took them 7-8 months to report her missing. And then they didn't find her for 3 years.
Her family doesn't even report her missing for 6 months. It's crazy.
When Christine was reported missing, the police said, quote, "People walk away from their lives all the time." Her remains were found in a wooded swamp area behind a vacant mobile home where Antoine Pittman used to actually live at.
Sketchy.
Mm-hmm.
Next victim, Roberta Williams. She was 40, found March 28th, 2010. Last seen spring 2008 off Seven Bridges Road. How many victims are related to Seven Bridges Road at this point? Yeah. Her skeleton was found with her hands above her head. She was found face down and naked and was covered with maggots and beetles. She was HIV positive and she wasn't reported missing.
The next victim, January 2011, 37-year-old Yolanda Lancaster was found by hunters in the wood in a rural Edgecombe County. Her nickname was Snap. Isn't that cool? Burn Snap. Becca Snap.
Becca Snap.
She was actually the last woman that was found. She lived in a house with no electricity and no water, where the town was slow to condemn. Yolanda always called to check on her 2 kids, and she hadn't for a while. She had a history of drug and alcohol abuse.
She disappeared 2009 after an argument with her boyfriend, and after a few weeks of not hearing from her and not calling her kids, her mom became worried. Her mom said, "After you do everything that you can do to raise them the right way, when they grow up, you got no more to say. They choose their own way. Just because somebody tossed her away like trash, that is not who she was." Yolanda knew 3 of the victims. The people were Hargrove, Wiggins, and Thorpe. This victim, again, was also found in very close proximity to Lancaster and Hargrove, who she knew.
Right. Just like a bunch of hookers hanging out, go missing one by one. That must have been extremely scary. Like that's your job.
Right.
You know you need drugs. You go out every day and you know that you get into a car and it could be your last. And the police don't give a shit. So it must have been really terrifying.
And when you look at the map at what is it called?
Seven Bridges Road?
Seven Bridges Road. It's not a main route, and it's in a very rural area. So these are Black, drug-addicted women that are working in a very small area and getting picked off, one every 6-8 months? Right.
Right. The next victim was Joyce Renee Durham, 46. She was last seen June 17th, 2007, and she was actually one of the victims who was never recovered. She was last seen on 1500 block Harper Street. She disappeared during this killing spree, and she fit the victim profile. Her stepdad said she had a great sense of humor and she was a comedian.
She was 5 feet 2 inches tall and weighed 118. She had black hair and brown eyes. So there's a number here that can be called if anyone hears this and knows anything. 252-977-1111. There's a reward. It's confidential.
And I definitely want to bring up Travis Harrison, which is not in order, but he was a cross-dresser in the sex trade, age 24. He was found in June 2006. He had the same background as the other victims, drug abuse and prostitution. He was found dismembered, and his autopsy said he had been dead for a few weeks. They couldn't tell how he had died, but he had cocaine in his system, and he was found naked, similar to the other women.
Harrison's mom and stepmom said they were disappointed in the lack of attention from the police and the media. "My son's death should be included with the others," his mother said. Now we're going to talk about some of the assault victims that survived Antoine's wrath.
One of them was Janessa Williams, 38, of Rocky Mount. She was taken down a road in summer of 2008 where the other women had gone missing. He became angry and said he would kill her unless she performed the sex acts that he wanted. He rarely spoke and looked crazy, she said. Quote, he took me out there. He wouldn't stop. He told me he was going to kill me if I didn't do what he told me. I tried to get out of the car 4 times. He stopped on the road, and Williams said her survival instinct kicked in. Quote, when I got out, I ran and hid in a ditch. He came back, and I could see him looking for me before he gave up and left. I got a ride back with some Mexicans in a truck, and I was crying. Williams said she told Rocky Mountain Police, and they said it's your own fault for getting into a car with somebody you don't know.
Because if you get in a car with somebody you don't know, you should be assaulted. And
so all these crimes are going on.
Right.
They know women are going missing, and then they tell her it's her fault instead of using it as a lead.
I mean, she could have given them a description. She could have, I'm sure she could have described the car.
She did.
Oh my God.
She told them what kind of truck he was driving.
Oh.
Black pickup with Chevrolet written on the back in large white letters.
Oh my God.
Nah, no big deal.
Meh.
I don't feel like working today, really. She described the suspect as thin and real dark-skinned, and he was sucking on a crack pipe. He had glasses and a mustache.
There are a few victims that actually went to court and testified against Antoine, and I'll talk about those now. So there were 3 of them. One of the women is called Worsley. She testifies that she was taken to the woods, sounds just like the other one, almost killed, violently attacked. He stopped short of killing her and took her home. Another woman was named Veronica Powers. She was assaulted. When Antoine was questioned in court, he said, I've never seen her a day in my life. Bernie and I were talking about this. Like, when do you say, I've never seen that person a day in my life?
I've never heard anybody say that.
Right. If you don't know someone, you're just like,
You're like, did you see that person? And I say, I have never seen that person a day in my life. That sounds rehearsed. That sounds like something you would think about saying.
Yeah. Another victim was Darlene Moore. She was assaulted to the point of death. It doesn't really go into a lot of detail. She made it sound like he came to his senses and let her go. A few weeks later, she was driving with a friend and recognized him, followed him in her car and to where he lived, got his address, and reported it to police. But there was no follow-up because she got into a car and she deserved to get assaulted to the point of death.
We're going to talk a little bit about Antoine Pittman and what I could find out about him. He was born July 15th, 1978, and raised by a single teen mother. She was in trouble with the law a lot, and he had an absent dad. He was learning disabled, on Ritalin, and taken from his mom at one point from social services. He dropped out during the 9th grade.
He also had 3 brothers and a sister. Let's talk about some old criminal charges that Antoine had. One was age 16, where he attempted rape on a 2-year-old. After he got out of prison over the next 10 years, we have soliciting a prostitute, assault, resisting arrest, OUI, and also failing to register as a sex offender.
We also have some of the connections between the victims and Antoine. So this is pretty interesting. As a teenager, Pittman lived with his grandparents a few miles from Seven Bridges Road, where the remains of Nicholson, Williams, Thorpe, Battle, Hargrove were found. He also worked on a farm near this area. Christine Boone, 43, was found in a wooded area behind the former residence of Antoine Pittman. Pittman also lived at a house on Columbia Ave, about a block from a field where the found Elizabeth Smallwood and where 24-year-old Travis Harrison, a male cross-dresser, were found.
A trooper with North Carolina Highway Patrol found Pittman on April 25th. He was passed out in his car in a ditch on Severn Bridges Road. So how many times have we heard this? 6 times, probably. His boots were muddy and his pants were unzipped. 2 months later, Sunshine, who we already talked about, her body was found only 200 yards from where he was passed out in his car.
Here's a legit question. You find someone in their car, their boots are muddy, their pants are unzipped. You're not going to search around the area at all? Is that weird?
Of course it's weird. And he wasn't found on the street. He his car was not found parked on the street. It was found parked in a field. So he murdered her and was probably so drunk and fucked up that he made it to the field and then couldn't drive anymore and passed out. You don't look around the surrounding area.
Nope.
Oh my God.
In September 2009, Antoine Pittman, a registered sex offender, was finally charged with the murder of Tahara Nicholson. Authorities said that he is a suspect in 7 more cases, but has never been charged. Pittman said he had sex with Nicholson at a hotel March 1st, 2009, and he dropped her off and never saw her again. His fluids were inside of her and on her clothes. He said that he wore a condom, but it broke.
Now we're going to break down what happened in court with Antoine. So we'll talk a little bit about his defense and his alibi. He says that he was with his girlfriend early evening, March 1st. He said he went to Blockbuster with her.
Blockbuster.
He needed to return some videotapes.
Hardcore. That's a really good alibi by itself. I'm going to return some videotapes. Case closed. He's innocent.
Okay. Then he gets a call from his manager. Apparently he's a rapper. He's not only a rapper, he also works at Purdue Chicken, like in a mill working on chicken breasts. So chicken man, rapper man,
Blockbuster man.
murder man.
Right.
Okay. Goes to Blockbuster. Gets a call from his manager. He's a rapper. He goes to a studio. He can't say where the studio is. And then he records some songs. I want to know where these songs are.
I know. We need to dig those up.
I think I tried to look it up, but like, what do you even look up?
I don't know.
And what were the names of the songs?
No Shoes McGee. Muddy Boots McGee.
Muddy Boots McGee.
Sunshine No Pants.
Sunshine No Pants. Part 2.
Do.
Part 6.
No Shoes McGee. Part do.
All right, goes to the studio, does some jams, leaves. Here's an interesting part of his alibi. He talks about after he leaves the studio, making No Pants McGee, part 2. He goes to go to his cousin's house, but the lights are off, so he just drives by. What I think is weird is like, why would his lawyer tell him to include that? That gives no strength to his alibi. Driving by a house with the lights off?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
No, that's a really bad alibi.
Drives by his cousin's house. He's not there. He's on it seemed like a little bit, it seems like he's in a little bit of a city area and he's on a street with a library. He says he's flagged down by a black female. What I find interesting and totally unrealistic is that he says she just jumps in the car. So she doesn't go over to his window and say, do you want to do this sexual exchange? She just jumps in the car. So that is showing us that she must know him.
Right.
She had to have hooked up with him before and knows that he's whatever, safe enough to get into the car with and make some money.
She didn't even think about it. She just got in the car.
Up until now, when Antoine is testifying for the defense, he keeps his cool. His pace isn't quick. He doesn't seem overly anxious. He's not doing any big gestures. So in this next line of questioning, we see Antoine start to lose his cool a little bit. His gestures get bigger. His pace quickens when he's talking. All right, according to him, he goes to a hotel that has rooms by the hour. He doesn't disclose the name, what room he stayed in. He says that the hotel worker doesn't keep a ledger, so the hotel worker doesn't write down the exchange. He also says that there's no numbers on the door, which again, I don't even know why I guess he has to include it in his alibi because he has to say where he took her.
Right.
But
it sounds like a high-class hotel.
There's not even a name. I was like, I'm going to look up what this hotel looks like. It can't. Crazy. Okay. So again, does not help his alibi. He goes to a no-name hotel where there's no receipts that he went there. So he says they had sex. The exchange was maybe 10 minutes long and the condom breaks. After that, he brings her back to where he picked her up by the library. Cut and dry exchange. That's all he discloses about that. Okay, let's fast forward 4 months. He's questioned by police. He tells police that he's never slept with a prostitute. This puts us in August. He slept with her March 1st. 4 months later puts us in August. So he's shown a picture of Tara and a few other missing women. He says he doesn't recognize anybody. He's asked for a DNA sample. And at this point, he tells police he would have to get back to them about it. But he wasn't under any kind of arrest. So, I mean, if somebody asked me for a DNA sample and I didn't have a charge, no fucking way I would get that.
I know.
In court, when he's questioned by the prosecution about why he didn't willingly give a sample, he said that the police didn't say who they were. He was confused about who was interviewing him. And his lawyer was very quick to be like, no, you did know who they were, to correct his ridiculous mistake. He says that he didn't want to give a sample because he did not want to risk losing his girl. This statement alone shows that when he saw the picture of Tara, he had to have known that it was her. So he's not willing to give a DNA sample, even though he doesn't know any of these girls and supposedly hasn't had sex with any of these girls.
Lies.
Does not make any sense. All right, we're going to move to the cross-examination. The prosecution begins by asking about his computer. Antoine says his computer is kept at a friend's house. He says that his computer isn't password protected. Anybody can use it. He's also very eager to talk about all of the barbecues and parties that are there, and that anyone can use a computer. I think he said it I think I counted 5 times. This is why the computer is important. I don't really feel like the first part I'm going to talk to you about is really damning, but it does plant that seed of doubt. In his search history are the hits Rape Core, Rape Me Daddy, Rape Gallery. And to this he says, I have nothing to do with that activity. I don't really feel like that search holds any weight because anybody can use the computer, but...
Anybody. I mean, everybody doesn't look for rape porn. It's not everybody. It's one person.
Right. And also in his recycle bin, he had some rape videos that had been moved in there. So let's think about what's in your search history? I'm scared.
Here are some things that are in my search history. If you really, really want to know. Bedwetting and serial killers.
Totally.
Case file podcast. Do peeping toms escalate their behavior? Also, electromagnetic hypersensitivity, which is a disease that I'm pretty sure I have.
You must.
I know I have it. Facebook. That's pretty boring. Human magnet syndrome.
You have that?
You can check that out. I don't have that.
Is that the same as
No.
Illuminati disease?
No. Killer couples, LL Bean, oxygen.com, True Crime All the Time podcast, and YouTube. And that's just the select few I dare to tell you.
Oh my God. I don't even want to know. I didn't write down what was in my search history, but off the top of my head, I would say obviously WebMD.
Cats with behavioral difficulties.
Why is my cat peeing on stuff?
Cats with 2 legs. Dogs with 2 legs.
I love
blind cats. Deaf and blind cats.
I love an animal that's got an injury. What else? Why is my appendix hurt? Where is my liver? That's a big one.
Is this hemorrhoid cancer?
Fuck you.
That's one.
How much alcohol do you have to drink before
you die? Does alcohol cause anxiety?
Anxiety solutions, medical marijuana used for anxiety, and
anxiety before bed, anxiety before work,
sleep paralysis.
Oh God.
And trying to look for pictures of Tom Hardy naked from Taboo.
Those are easy to find.
All right, that's good.
Just in case you want to know.
Anyway, there's no rape.
Oh, no, mine. No rape. No? Mine either.
Crazy. All right. Although anybody can access his computer, it's open, it's not password protected. The second part of what was looked up holds a lot of weight. Before, I didn't know anything about this case when I started. So obviously I'm leaning towards, and I didn't read anything about this case first. I just watched the testimonies. So until I heard this next information, I didn't really feel one way or the other about Antoine. But when I read this next piece, I definitely felt some type of way. What is important to remember here is the timeline. He has sex with Tara March 1st. She's discovered March 7th. And March 10th, he looks up an article about her online. He always accesses this Rocky Mountain Telegram online, but that also feels like a crock of shit. I mean, it's incriminating. He has sex with her March 1st, discovered March 7th, looks up an article about the discovery of her body March 10th.
Not to mention the semen inside of her.
We're going to get to that. Calm down with the semen.
Sorry.
We're going to talk about some more cross-examination with Antoine. But before we do that, I want to talk something about tells. You know what tells are?
Like when you touch your face, when you're talking.
Right.
I don't know. What are some of the tells when you're lying?
So the FBI uses a certain number of tells to see if people are lying. So these are things like darting eyes, rapid blinking, closing eyes. One that my husband always, I swear to God, my husband uses this. So if you look up and to the right, you are accessing your imagination. So you look up and to the right, you're accessing your imagination. You're lying.
Wow.
If you look up and to the left, you're accessing memory. So I swear to God,
oh my God,
if I look up and to the right, he'll be like, why are you lying about that? And of course it's something like silly, but my husband uses the FBI tells on me. All right. I'm going to do some on Bernie.
Right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. I think of what to ask for.
Ask me anything.
Am I your favorite sister?
Yes. Is a smile a tell?
Yeah, a smile's a tell.
Well, it's true.
All right, try one on me.
How about saying, well, it's true? Does that make it like a lie?
That you've never seen me a day in your life?
All right, I'll ask you something. When you get angry at me, is that why you don't talk to me for like 2 days? Because you're really secretly angry?
I'm closing my eyes right now. It's because I'm trying to think of a good answer. I'm not actually mad at you.
All right. Some time alone.
When Antoine's being interviewed by his lawyer, you only see big gestures and him talking fast. When he's cross-examined, you're going to see a bunch of different tells. So Bernadette's going to talk to you about the cross-examination, and I'll try to interject. I marked where he starts to do these bigger tells, and I'll just interject those in. Like when he's talking to his lawyer, he does this gesture to, ultimately show that he's lying.
The cross-examination begins by focusing on his alibi. He said the entire encounter while at the hotel took 10 to 15 minutes. This includes checking in, sex, the condom breaking, and then leaving the room. This is not even believable for an amount of time to check in, have sex, and leave. So the cross-examiner digs a little bit deeper. Antoine then says that he was actually there 30 to 35 minutes. He says it took him 15 minutes to get back to where he picked up Tara, which places him...
It places him there. It places him back, dropping off Tara at 12. So when he's talking about all that stuff, what I did also find interesting is he always repeats back the questions that the cross-examiner says, which is buying him time. So along with his big gestures, you start to see rapid speech, and he starts to get a lot of sweat on his forehead.
This is when some DNA evidence comes into play. When Tara was found, she had semen inside of her. That makes sense with what Antoine said about the condom breaking. What does not make sense is that there were tails on the sperm.
I feel like this is the nail in the coffin moment. What is to note about Tara is that the sperm in her is intact. This means that she died close to the deposit time. It's not debatable. So he had sex with her, and then she simply wasn't moving anymore.
Right.
If she was walking around, the sperm wouldn't have tails.
So if you're like alive and moving, the sperm sort of disintegrates.
Right.
But if you're dead, then the sperm is like fine.
If you're lying totally
intact.
still. She was found 6 days later. So she wasn't moving.
Right.
This, coupled with the fact that Antoine can't prove he went to a hotel with her, creates that doubt. There's not... I can't figure out another explanation unless he has sex with her. She goes out on the street. Somebody else finds her.
And kills her.
And she somehow doesn't move her body around.
No.
It just doesn't make any sense. So these are the big aspects of the case we know. DNA evidence of his semen and the way the semen was preserved in her says that she died right after she had sex.
Right. He definitely killed her. And the defense is a joke.
There's no alibi.
Right. Antoine Pittman was convicted September 28th, 2011 of first-degree murder of Tara Nicholson. There was less than an hour of deliberation. And then he said, quote, "You are sending an innocent man to prison for life." And then he sobbed and said, "I did not kill that woman." He had got an automatic life in prison with no parole.
Now we're going to talk a little bit about how the police are involved or not involved. It took 7 bodies and 4 years before the police even formed a task force to look for all of these missing girls, and that was in 2009. The police didn't get seriously involved until news started coming out and when the families really were coming forward to demand that their family members get looked into.
Correct. The news didn't cover it until the dead and missing victims started showing up on billboards. And the billboards were put up by a group called MOMS, meaning Missing or Murdered Sisters, founded by Stephanie Jones, 28, who knew 2 of the dead girls. She raised money through fish fries and motorcycle rides. The billboard company gave her a good deal, and one donor gave her $20,000, half for the billboard and half for a reward to find the killer. The authorities didn't warn the community, and they didn't deem it important enough that a serial killer was in their midst. They did not care about the women on fringes of society that were vulnerable and unprotected. It took until 2010 for them to even say the word serial killer.
Bitter residents feel the police sat on the case too long, possibly due to the hostile relationships between law enforcement and African Americans living in the area, and prostitutes' mistrust of the police. The reason we're not hearing about serial killers isn't because they don't exist, but because the victims aren't newsworthy. They're not newsworthy enough to get the same amount of coverage as white victims. It's not an opinion.
Right.
It's just the
There's
truth.
plenty of black serial killers. There's Anthony Sewell, right?
What did he do?
Murdered black women for years. Grim Sleeper.
Yeah, I think he had close to 100 victims, black prostitutes.
Yeah. And I think they only connected him to like 6.
Yeah.
Insane.
Yeah.
And probably many, many more. So basically, Antoine Pittman is the murderer of the victims, or there was more than one serial killer working at the same time, or the killer is still on the loose in North Carolina.
Although there are aspects that are not concrete evidence like DNA or a witness, they poke holes in Antoine's alibi. The account of his time with Tara creates a lot of reasonable doubt. I think on top of all of these is that the other black female prostitutes that were killed in a like manner, they were killed just like Tara was killed in such a small, concentrated area.
And all the survivors that spoke about him in court knew him. Yes. So he was assaulting prostitutes for a long time.
They say assaulted close to the point of death.
I mean, he could be the serial killer that killed all 10 to 12 of these victims, or it could be a couple. I mean, he was only charged for 1.
The women's family don't report them missing for 6 months. So there's no better, you don't want to say no better victim, but there's no victim that will be less missed.
They picked those victims on purpose, that's for sure. But at the same time, Antoine Pittman had the same upbringing as all these girls. He's a black man who it would be very easy for the state to be like, you did it. Everyone's going to believe it. Case closed. So who really knows? The murders did stop upon Pittman's capture.
Crazy.
Yeah. Some people in town believe Pittman is not the killer of all the victims. They believe the killer might be a police officer, or it could be an angry John who may have gotten HIV from a prostitute. The victims had to force the hands of the families, the cops, and the media. And now that the trial is over, the case has been forgotten again, and all of those families don't have any justice.
We're going to end this podcast with a quote from the Rocky Mountain Police Chief, which is sad but true and extremely telling of the case. The police chief said, "The families need to stay on us. Let us know you aren't going away until you know we've done everything we could possibly do. Because if you don't care, I don't know, why should we?" It's their job, but they don't care unless somebody is nagging them to investigate murder victims.
We hope that you liked our podcast today. And if you did, then give us high reviews on iTunes. And please go to our website, murderific.com. You can follow us on Instagram or Twitter. We hope that you come back again where we'll be executing podcasts one crime at a time. Bye.
Bye.
do something, do it well. And leave something with you. Leave a sign to let the world know that you were there. Have a good day.
Hello and welcome to the Murderific True Crime Podcast, featuring your host, Bernadette. Today she is joined by special guest, Michaela.
Welcome to Murderific Podcast. Today, my guest is Michaela.
Hello.
And my name is Bernadette, and I brought Michaela along because she is a wrestling expert.
A little bit. I know some things.
She knows all the 80s, all the 90s.
And little early 2000s in there.
Our podcast today is about Chris Benoit, nicknamed the best technical wrestler in the world, the Rabid Wolverine, and his most famous, the Canadian Crippler. We will be telling the story about his professional wrestling career of 22 years. And he worked for the WWF, the WWE, the WCW, and he even wrestled in Japan. He was considered one of the top 5 technical wrestlers in the world. Unfortunately, this story is not only about Chris Benoit, but about the murder of his beautiful wife, his 7-year-old child, and his suicide in June of 2007, and how these events came about. In this case that shocked the world, and with a man that seemed to have everything, a man who made more than $500,000 a year, who lived in an Atlanta, Georgia mansion. At the time of the murders, Chris Benoit was still one of the premier athletes at WWE. At 40, he had moved into the veteran stage of his career, but he was still a major draw for audiences. Benoit is often mentioned in the same breath as Ric Flair or Macho Man Randy Savage.
I would say Benoit is still regarded as one of the greatest wrestlers of all time.
Oh.
Literally by anyone else in professional wrestling would say he's top 5, one of the greatest wrestlers ever.
Top 5 with who?
Well, I guess Ric Flair definitely. I guess I don't know who people consider the greats as compared to mine. Macho Man was not a good wrestler. He was
right.
A mic guy.
So maybe they're like saying the most famous wrestlers. Like he would be.
He's one of the most
up there.
Technically talented wrestlers. Like,
right.
You know.
Right.
So we're going to talk about Chris Benoit's early life. He was born May 21st, 1967, and passed away June 24th, 2007. He was born in Montreal, Quebec, the son of Michael and Margaret Benoit. He had one sister, and they grew up in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. His father said he was obsessive as a child, totally in love with the idea of being a wrestler, and he started preparing himself at the age of just 12. In high school, he won numerous awards in wrestling and bodybuilding and started weight training at the age of 13.
Some of his early influences and training. Dynamite Kid, Tom Billington. Is that one person? Dynamite Kid is Tom Billington, correct?
Yeah, Tom Billington is the Dynamite Kid.
And Bret Hart were his inspirations as a child, and he went to a lot of the shows where they performed. He copied both the wrestlers while training and even used Bret's finishing move, quote, sharpshooter, as one of his finishing moves in his career. His training started early where he convinced Bret Hart's father, Stu, to allow him to study at the famous dungeon, the basement training center beneath Hart's mansion, where other legends such as Hart, Brian Pillman, and Lance Storm learned their craft. He picked up the craft quickly, mastering the holds, leaps, kicks, and the famous stunts that look so real on camera.
One thing to note about that is Benoit never had another job. He started wrestling with them like just out of high school, possibly still in high school. He never did anything other than wrestling his entire life.
That's crazy. Like nobody does that anymore.
No, not at all. Usually they just do it for a small amount of time until their body can't handle it anymore, I guess.
Right. So like if he wanted to be a cashier, he wouldn't have even known how to be a cashier.
No.
That's nuts.
Benoit began his career in 1985 at the Stampede Wrestling promotion. They gave him the nickname Dynamite or Dynamite Chris because of his large resemblance to the Dynamite Kid with his wrestling technique. His time at Stampede got him noticed and considered for bigger leagues. While he was there, He won 4 British Commonwealth titles and 4 international tag team titles.
In 1989, Chris joined New Japan Pro Wrestling. He fought under the name the Pegasus Kid and later started wearing a mask. Throughout the 90s, he won Best of Super Juniors tournament twice and won a Super J Cup tournament. During the 90s, he wrestled in Japan, Mexico, and Europe, where he won a few small championship titles.
Chris Benoit was really popular over in Japan. They let him win a lot of different titles over there when usually, at least back then, like foreigners came in mostly to lose and make the normal champions look really good. But they really liked Benoit.
Interesting. Continuing